So now I'm going to get to one of the most challenging parts of this build. We got a lot going on here. I got to work my metal up around this porch, and then we're going to come across, and then I have a garage door plus this eyebrow, and this piece is going to go in there, up around. So it's gonna be pretty challenging. First thing I'm gonna do is just get the garage door trimmed out, and then we'll start right there and work our way across and see what we can do here today. All right, guys, so the next trim we're gonna talk about is our garage door trim. I use what they call a sliding door trim. I have it built to be even with my inside girts, come out, goes back, returns the ball, and then goes that way, and then I put a J in here to accept my metal. It's a nice clean look. This is what it looks like right here. So that'll cover the jam, then it goes out, and then the J trim for the side steel will sit right there, and it'll make sense. So we're gonna get started cutting these. So the first thing I need to do is get a measurement from right in there in that corner down to here. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to put this trim on before the concrete goes in, so this goes way down below the concrete. So now I made a level line across here, and that's where I'll bring that trim to. I'll measure from that corner up there to this line, and that will be my starting measurement. So it is right at 10 feet. Right there is 10 feet. So that's my corner up there. So mark 10 feet. Now, this is going to be on the inside of the jam, so I'm going to leave an inch right here to bend over. We're going to go ahead and mark an inch. And that's actually where we'll cut it. Whenever you get your trims, you need to know what these dimensions are. So this is 1 5/8", which I know this because I've done this a bit, but I always still make myself. I always get these like an extra foot or two, just so I can cut a piece off and make a template. To this line is 10 feet. Okay, and then I want to come over 1 5/8", up 1 5/8", and make a line. And then I'm going to keep that because that's going to extend up above the jam, that thickness. And then right here, I'm going to do a 1-inch bend over. And this will make sense once I cut all this off. And then here's the top jam. So the top jam will come across like this. And then that angle will overlap that extra 1 5/8" that I'm leaving. So essentially this will come down like that and overlap. I always like to make a template just to make sure you only get one shot in cutting all this stuff. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna check my measurements one more time, get all this prepped, and then I'll see how this template fits. And then we'll cut the other side. Alright guys, so I cut this down to 1 inch so that I could use this tool. It's important to get a nice sharp bend here, and this is exactly 1 inch deep. So you want to have a block or something to put this on, so you have something nice to push against. So you're just going to line that up, push down, and then get it bent up to 90. Now we have a nice sharp bend there. So there's the side one all prepped. Got a 1-inch bend over that'll go. So this piece will come in, fit like that, and then we have an angle right there, so that looks nice. All right, so we have these prepped. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them up. I go ahead and mark my screw locations. And I'll show you once you get this up. This will be even with the inside girth. You can get a 90-degree bend here, but the problem with that is if your columns aren't perfectly planed to be exactly what they are, it can cause you problems. So I like to leave this flush with the inside, and then my garage door trim rides along here anyway, and it ends up working out really well. And then when I trim out the inside, I have a piece of trim that comes down and tucks behind this. And also, if this ever gets damaged, then your tracks and all that aren't screwed through this, causing you problems getting it off. But I'm only gonna put 3 screws in the face of this against the jamb, because there's gonna be screws going up the side in the steel and the J-trim, so it'll be plenty strong. All right, so our trim is on. So when you're putting this on, you want to make sure that this is nice and straight and this is square. If you push this in too far, this will get a little crooked. But now we're going to cut the top one up there. I have measured the opening from there to there, and I'm going to have to add to each side 1 5/8", plus I'm going to add about another 3/4 inches to that so that I can bend down so that that comes over and loops down. I like to lay this trim, I'm going to have to swing it around because I like to visualize how it's going to go up. Alright guys, so you only have one chance to cut these, and these are not like incredibly cheap pieces of trim. So what I suggest is writing all your measurements down, marking this out before you cut it. I made 2 measurements because I couldn't hold the tape. So my door opening, if this makes sense, so I'm 3/8 short of 12 feet. So I'm 11 and 5/8 on my opening. I'm gonna add 1 5/8 to each side. So 1 5/8 plus 1 5/8 is 3 1/4. Then I'm going to add another 3/4 to each side to bend down over the edge. So that's 1 1/2. Total, I have 12 feet, 4 3/8. So what I did is I hooked on that end, came down, this is 12, 4 3/8. Then I marked my 3/4 bend, my 1 5/8 past the opening. And then I did that on this side. Now I gotta measure between that line and the other line to see if it equals my original door opening. This is actually the edge of the inside of the door. And so you can see this will go out the 1 5/8. There'll be a nice little angle cut. And then I'll bend this over the end. And then I'll have a piece of J up here that comes out. These are pretty flimsy. I did have a hem put on here because I knew I'd probably be doing this by myself. But I think I'm gonna take and rip down a 2x4 1 5/8 and put a couple pieces up there just so I have something to hook it onto to help me hold it on one side so I don't end up dropping it, because this will bend if I drop it. All right guys, again, I pre-marked all my screw locations, and then I just hung a couple blocks, cut these 1 5/8 so this will hook right on there. I put one over there, one in the middle, and one right there, and that's so I can hold this by myself. This thing's pretty flimsy, so I'm gonna get it up there, get a couple screws in it. Look pretty good over there. Pretty good over there. Alright, you guys can see this piece overlaps, got a little angle cut here, and then here is our bend over right here. I'm gonna instead of tucking my house wrap, I'm gonna just use some zip tape along here and tape this all off. We're right underneath this anyway. Typically I would go over the top, but I'm just gonna zip tape this to here. So it turned out pretty good. Pretty happy with it. All right, now that I have that all trimmed out, I've got it all taped, secured. I gotta deal with this eyebrow. My pieces of steel are gonna come across and one is gonna intersect. It's gonna have to go up along the garage door, in, up around. So I need to get my bottom trim on, which I have an FJ, which a 1/2 inch FJ, to accept soffit, and then trim out the sides, which I just have flat stock for that, and then I have a special piece of trim I made for up top. So I got to get all of that on there, and then I can start running my steel across and deal with that piece. Hopefully it's not too difficult to get in there. I'm gonna have to tape everything because I'm by myself. All right, so I have my 1/2 inch FJ up there. Put a row of blocking down the middle because I'm gonna have soffit going all the way out. So I'm gonna put that row of blocking in, and then we'll get our soffit put up. Then we can do our sides. All right, so I made this piece. I had them basically give me like an L24 fascia. And so this will go on the gable end of my eyebrow. I did a 1-inch bend out, so that'll be up against the building. I'll have a J trim along here. And then I did a 1-inch bend, so it'll go around the front of the fascia. And then this will trim out my soffit. So we're gonna go put this up and see how we did. That's a nice fit right there. So we'll have a J trim that comes up along here that the steel goes up in, and then we'll cut the steel over, and then this will slide in to the steel. I'll make a slit in the steel, and then we'll slide this into it. Corner trim that comes down over a good portion of this. You can see that trims out at the bottom of the soffit. Alright, I successfully got this piece in here by myself, and I covered basically everything with tape. There's no way I would have got this up here without scratching anything. And I also left a couple pieces of trim off. I left my J trim off the door, which that should not be a problem getting in. I left my J trim off here, which will be very difficult to get in. And then I left this trim down. So now I'm gonna cut this, slide it into place. Then I gotta figure out how to get this J up into here. It'll tuck up underneath and seal this off. Got a lot of handprints on there, but other than that, it looks really good. So I slid that in out there. This is just a template piece of corner. We'll go up underneath, and then I'll cut an angle down. I just want to make sure everything was fitting okay. I think we're gonna end up pretty good. All right, so there that is finished. This is all finished. I'll have a corner that comes up along here. It'll get cut at an angle, go up in behind there, put a J up along there. Once I get a couple more pieces, I'll slide it in. What I did here is I cut a slit out to here, slid my J up in, and then I custom bent a piece that goes back in there, 90s. That way it covers this bottom white piece that's below that slit. So that was the only way I could get that in, and it actually looks really nice. Turned out good. I will use some black adhesive there, or sealant. Once we get all this done, I'll go around and do all that, but it turned out pretty good. I'm just gonna continue across here now. All right, so I have this piece over, you can see, got a notch there. And I couldn't put this J trim and get this in here by myself. And I did this on the other side too. So cut a slit out. I'm gonna slide this J up in there, and then I'll custom bend another piece of trim to cover this last little bit of white that's down here. Not sure I can do this with one hand or not. All right, so that's in there. My corner trim will go up underneath there, get trimmed up in there. But this is the part we have to deal with right here. So I have a cut across here, so I need to cover that because of this. Is I'm gonna take a piece of flat stock and I'm gonna cut it almost like a reverse J, and it'll fit in here and trim all this out, and it'll look real nice. All right, so here's the piece of trim I made. I just put a hem on that side, and that will fit right in there like that. And then I can screw it in, so I'll slide it all the way up. Get it pushed in there, get it screwed in, we'll be good to go. We're gonna get all this wainscot finished up. Pretty pumped about that. And then we'll start working above this porch here.